Welcome to the Circular Economy Show podcast. I'm your host, Finn. This is the final episode of our fashion series, and over the past couple of episodes, we've met two companies working towards a circular economy for fashion. That means creating better products and services for customers, contributing to a resilient and thriving fashion industry, and regenerating nature. In today's episode, we travel to London to get VIP access to a pioneering British high-end fashion designer. With a unique and innovative attitude towards design, Patrick McDowell hopes to change mindsets in the fashion industry and transform actions all the way from the boardrooms to the high street. But where did it all begin? We visited Patrick's studio in London near the iconic Tower Bridge to find out.
The first thing I ever made when I was 13 was a school bag out of a pair of jeans, and I was fascinated then by how people reacted to that, and people didn't believe that this thing I was carrying around had been made out of something which they were wearing, and so I found that very interesting and engaging, and I thought this is something I'd like to do more of. In many ways, Circularity has made a lot of decisions for me that has enabled me and my brand to progress maybe quicker than it would have without it, because those decisions were made for me by what was available. And I think it was clear as a young person that I had to kind of do things my own way to make things happen. And it also became clear working in the fashion industry that there was many flaws that didn't really make any sense, both from a waste perspective, but also just from a design perspective as well. It didn't seem like a clever idea to be making stuff if it was all going to be going to landfill or incineration.
Patrick's first encounters with circular design were driven by financial constraint. They told us more about how an education at Central St Martin's harnessed their creative potential.
I decided that fashion was a viable career option and Googled the best place to study it, and the result was Central St Martin's Women's Wear, and so from then on I tried everything possible to get in here.
Since studying at Central St Martin's, Patrick is making great strides in reinventing the role of a fashion designer. They explained how they ensure their designs not only make us feel powerful, but encourage us to act.
It's the stories that people get behind, right? You can list off facts and figures for days, but it's ultimately the story that someone tells that you remember and that you kind of take and put into your own life. And so I think that it's my role as a designer to tell those stories through my collections, but also a wider responsibility for the circular narrative, that we keep doing it in a really compelling and interesting way that encourages people to become circular too.
It was while producing their graduate collection that Patrick realised that using repurposed materials further enhanced the story behind their designs.
Yeah, I guess when I was here, it became apparent, especially through my graduate collection, that the power of the story attached to it could really help the work go a lot further. And I think especially when you're working with like repurposed materials or upcycled Swarovski crystals, as I was then, the story behind those materials is so much richer. And so when you add it to an amazing like personal concept, it just really helps the whole thing to kind of take off.
The graduate collection was just the start for Patrick. Their willingness to support a global push to make fashion circular has seen them collaborate with brands across the fashion industry. Here they tell us more about their latest collection, a collaboration with Romar dance company.
So with this collection, we started with their archive and then went on to work with the costume department to find fabrics and costumes that they could no longer use. And we've been able to kind of remake and reinterpret them for this collection.
So Patrick adds another layer to the design process by choosing to primarily use repurposed materials. We followed Patrick as they told the story of the collection to the dancers at Romar and walked them through the design process.
So here we are at Romar's amazing building on the South Bank in London, and we're in the Lyon Studio, which is actually where the runway will take place. Today's incredibly exciting because it's the first rehearsal that the dancers are doing for the show, and I'm going to meet them and introduce the collection to them and show them some of the pieces from the archive that originally inspired the collection. We started with Burberry, using like old Burberry material, so it was very much like from the very beginning it was always about like what do you want to make, and then what have you got, and then what can you make from that. But because you kind of go through, it's almost like if you imagine if you like planned a dance once or planned it twice, you're like second time you think of things more that are more interesting, and that's kind of what happens because we design it and plan what we want and then look at what we've got and kind of design it again, and it usually makes it better.
Patrick was excited to tell the dancers about the material innovations being applied to the collection.
So you can see like the ballet, there's a blazer with the ballet print, and then the puffy skirt, and that material that's over it is Romar costume fabric. And then the padding underneath is this new material that's been made by a mycelium company, which is made completely from mushrooms. Yeah. So it's like 100%, like you could even eat it, which I think is so exciting.
How does Patrick feel about using circular materials?
We had conversations with people when we very first started where the answer was always no, to do with circularity and remaking pieces, and now people come to us asking those questions, which is incredible to see. And I think it's been amazing to watch the innovation that's happened, especially in fabric, because fashion starts with fabric and often the changes happen there first, and the new innovations that have come to commerciality in the past 5 years have been really promising. And so if that continues to happen also with supply chain and the manufacturing of the clothing and the design itself, I think we could see some really amazing shifts in the next 10 years.
Patrick's understanding of fashion's role in the circular economy goes far beyond the designs and materials used. So how are they embracing circularity and circular business models as a luxury fashion brand?
I mean, for me, it's always been really important that sustainability and circularity are just built into the business model at every point, and they're not an excuse for bad design. Sometimes you see people that focus on sustainability as the concept, and I think that never really works. So people come to us because they love our pieces and they like how they look, and they also like the message that they stand for, and I guess they're intertwined. But I've always thought that you still have to have a really great creative concept and then just business-wise have circularity and sustainability built in.
So circularity is at the core of Patrick McDowell the brand, but is it possible for other brands, including those on the high street, to adopt this too?
We are a luxury brand, and so our prices reflect that, but that doesn't mean that sustainability and circularity can't happen at all points of the industry. I think that they're tools that can be used at all levels of fashion, and it just happens that I'm doing it in a luxury space, but it's completely possible to do it on the high street and in kind of the mid-range of fashion as well. There becomes a slight problem with like ultra fast fashion and that space. I think it's quite challenging at certain price points when you're not able to cover the costs of the garment itself.
Over the last 3 episodes, we have learnt how a circular economy represents a significant opportunity for new and better growth in the fashion industry. During our time with Patrick, we learnt about the pivotal role designers play in not only creating beautiful clothing, but also redesigning the systems they sit within. Scaling business models like Patrick's will be vital to keep more clothes in use for longer and subsequently allow companies to make revenue without making new clothes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Circular Economy Show podcast from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Join us next week as we bring you the end-of-year review for 2023. Thanks for listening.